Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Every leader knows that growth starts with a single step, or sometimes a single insight. Our Paper Napkin Wisdom newsletter is designed to deliver those insights straight to you. It has already helped so many others, so why not make it your next move? Sign up at papernapkinwisdom.com.
Welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom, where we share pearls of wisdom shared by some of the world's top entrepreneurs, leaders, and difference makers. Here's your host, Govind Jayaraman.
Hi, I'm Govind Jayaraman, and this is Paper Napkin Wisdom, episode 231. Have you ever noticed how some of the most meaningful changes in your life began with a feeling? That quickening of the heart, that breath you didn't realize you were holding, that moment when the next step is clear, even if you don't know exactly where it leads. Today's guest understands that moment better than most. Laura Burke has walked through corporate boardrooms and across personal thresholds. She's guided others through transformation and lived it deeply. Her story might remind you of something you already know, but haven't acted on yet. Or it might open a door for you that you didn't even realize was waiting for you. In our conversation, we uncover something surprising, something you've probably felt but haven't had the words for. And as you listen, you might find yourself thinking differently, not just about fear or change or growth, but about what's possible for you. So as you settle into this episode, consider this. What if that moment you've been avoiding isn't a reason to turn back, but an invitation to something greater? Let's dive in. Laura Burke, welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom. I'm excited to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
All right. So you shared with me a very interesting paper napkin, and I said it was really fun because this almost never happens, but it actually showed up. The real napkin showed up on the same day as our podcast. So I'm excited about that. Your napkin says, if you are both excited and is underlined, and terrified, that's how you know it's worth it. And then there's a nice little heart. And then Laura, why did you share that?
I shared that because that has become, over my lifetime, sort of the mantra that I live by. I grew up very, very shy and painfully shy, afraid of everything. And it was really my dad who started to sort of show me that going out of my comfort zone was something to explore and something to really try to appreciate about life, is not just staying in my comfort zone. And so I learned over the years through lots of different personal and professional examples and experiences that, wow, if I recognize that something that I'm about to do, whether it was a relationship, whether it was a new career, a new hobby to try, anything that it was, I used to, growing up, just shy away from it if I was terrified by it. I just thought, no, this is not for me. But what I found is that if I am sort of simultaneously excited by it, but also terrified, those are always the things that ended up being so worth doing. So I try and instill that in my own kids, in the people that I work with, and just sort of shout that from the rooftops that you don't just have to be terrified and not do something. If there's any part of you that is excited about it also, then you should totally go for it, because that's going to be worth it.
That's awesome. So I like how you started off. This has become the mantra that I live by.
Yes.
But it wasn't that way at the beginning. And you talked about your father playing an important role in teaching that to you. You know, one of the things that I'm curious about is, how did that come about? Like, how did your father teach you to explore that side of you?
Yeah, I think something that was really unique about my dad, who has passed away in the last few years, is he always he always tried new things, even well into his life. Started golfing in his late 40s and was taking classes at the local college even into his 70s. He was always trying new things. And I think growing up, it was probably really hard for him to have a daughter that was so afraid of everything. He had been in the army many years ago, just prior to Vietnam, and he had an opportunity to sign back up and do 20 years in the military. And he always told me the story that's always stuck with me, that he decided not to sign up for 20-year, career in the military because he knew exactly what his life would be like if he had done that. And he decided that he wanted to take risks. He wanted to live a life that he wasn't sure what it was going to be and how it would unfold. And so I, heard that from him growing up, and still it didn't really stick for me until well into my 20s, when I thought, you know what, there's some risks I need to be taking personally and professionally. And I'm really scared by this. But in talking with my dad at the time, he reminded me that you can be scared, you can be terrified by something. But if there's any part of you that is also excited by it, then you should go for it. So that's what I started to do. And just my life completely changed after that in so many ways. I took so many more risks and opportunities in all aspects of my life because of that idea.
I love that. So it's not so much he taught you, he showed you, right? He
Mm-hmm.
demonstrated it by being that. Like he did
Yes.
it over and over again. And that was obviously sort of laying down the stones for you to follow on this path. Um, you talked about him saying it was okay to be afraid about it. Is that also something that he modeled? Was he transparent about that when you were growing up, that he wasn't sure how it was going to work out and he was scared about it?
Yeah, absolutely. That is something that I vividly remember because, as a daddy's girl, as someone that just thought her father was superhuman and could do no wrong and wasn't ever afraid of anything, I started to see that, he started his own business, and he, when he had a little bit of a perfectionist streak, which I also had. And so I think when I started seeing him do things that he really wanted to have them be perfect, but he was moving forward anyway. He wanted to be this amazing golfer right away, but he went forward anyway, knowing that he would have to start at the beginning, and knowing that he would have to practice a lot and really put himself into it, even though he was afraid to not be the best right away. That was something that I think was very memorable to me, is to see those things. I mean, even thinking about him not signing back up into the military, that was prior to me being born even. I wasn't even, alive when he made that decision. But the way that I knew he loved routine, he wanted to know what things were going to be. He was a type 1 diabetic. So, health wise, he always needed to kind of keep on track with things, but he was willing to be a little bit afraid to try different things and not know how life was gonna unfold for him, rather than be in the routine that I know mattered to him and I knew he thrived in typically.
That's amazing. Um, so you said that it played out for you later on because you got into your 20s and then professionally and personally got thrown some curveballs and you had to make the terrified yet excited choice.
Yes.
What did that look like? Like how did, I mean, did you just jump into that right away? Did you, oh, dad did this, so I'm going to do that? Is that how the switch went on and that's what you did?
No, definitely not. It was a lot of really trying smaller things first to get there. So I had started as a teacher. I started teaching special education when I was 22, right out of college. And I was also with my first husband at that time, who I'd been with since high school. So there was a lot of like safety in that. My mom had been a teacher. I was in a relationship that felt comfortable. So none of that felt like a big risk to me. And then I started being sort of encouraged to take more leadership roles in schools and go, back to school and get a master's degree and be more in leadership roles, which was really scary to me. But I started by just getting on a few committees and then maybe starting some new classes in my little world of the school. And so that started to help me understand, like, oh, I can take these smaller risks and I'm kind of excited by these things. I'm excited to learn more. And then eventually around, kind of when I was turning 30, I realized that the relationship that I was in, I had kind of outgrown, and that wasn't really healthy for me anymore. And so it was terrifying to think that I would be a single mom. I had two kids at the time. They were 3 and 6. And I thought, well, if I'm going to do something different personally, I really need to step away from this. I really need to, try to do something that is a better example for my kids as far as a healthy relationship. And so I was terrified to be a single mom. And yet I was excited about the fact that I could reinvent myself and I wouldn't kind of be the same person I had been 10, 15 years ago when I had first started dating him. So those were sort of the small incremental things that have happened. And I had my dad in my head that whole time. And at that time, he was still alive. So I was able to talk with him about it. And those sorts of conversations kept coming up a lot.
Yeah. So that's incredible. But you were also, and I don't usually do this where I pull something that was given to me about you without you sharing it. So I'm going to jump the script a little bit, which is not normal, but it's because we have a shared story. You were battling meningitis. Tell me about that.
I did. Yeah, right. It was about 3 months after I left my husband, which was about 2 days before the school year started. So that was in August. And then in November, I came down with meningitis, and I was coming home from parent teacher conferences from a very late night, and I was exhausted, and I kept thinking this was the worst headache I've ever had. I think I have a fever. I'm not sure what's going on. I can barely move my body. I could barely drive home. And when I got home, I called my mom at like 3 a.m. and I said, I don't know what's going on. I'm burning up. I can't move my neck. I have headache pain that is unreal. And her, luckily, well, not luckily, but her roommate in college had the same symptoms and ended up passing away within like 24 hours because at the time, nobody knew that that was meningitis and that it could be prevented. And so she said, I'm coming to get you right now. I'm taking you to the hospital. So I was alone. My kids thankfully were at their dad's house at the time. And she took me to the hospital, and here I am sort of mid-divorce, going through bankruptcy and moving and just all like every, of the 7 stressful things in life. It was like I had at least half of them going on. And they said, you have meningitis. They told my parents, like, I may never make a full recovery, just to be prepared for that, even if I did survive. And then, thankfully I did survive and I did make a full recovery. But that was right when I was finishing my master's degree also that year. So that year it was like divorce, bankruptcy, moving, meningitis. And then by the end of that year, I finished my master's degree and graduated on my 30th birthday with my kids there, which was amazing in so many ways, as you can imagine. So I didn't realize that you had meningitis also.
Didn't my son, my youngest son, had bacterial meningitis in 2018.
Wow.
And he had, very dangerous type of bacterial meningitis that, is the kind that runs through you like wildfire. He likewise was in the ICU, pediatric ICU, didn't come out of the hospital for several weeks. And then on top of that, needed hearing support. He became single-sided deaf on the right-hand side, so required a cochlear implant for that. And, for him, getting back into school has been a very challenging thing. It's taken him some years, but now he's found his stride now several years later. But that's essentially during that period of time is why Paper Napkin Wisdom went on hiatus, because he got sick and all hands on deck. Let's focus and support him. So that's our shared story. So I understand how challenging that can be, and what an incredible accomplishment it is to have completed your master's so quickly after that. Now, part of that was just getting back up on the horse again, but that must have been terrifying because your world changed after that.
It was terrifying. And I think, that's one reason why I work with women today. And sort of my big message is around empowering other women, not to give them power, but to learn and understand their own power that was within them the whole time. Because it was terrifying. I had never been a single mom before. I didn't know, what that would look like. My kids were still really young. I was working as a teacher full time. And it was really scary, but I think that's where I pulled in some of those entrepreneurial skills. So things like collaborate. I didn't do it myself. I collaborated. I had a village, a network of family and friends and coworkers that I leaned on from that. I really, learned from that marriage what didn't work about this. What did I fail? What was the learning from failure that I experienced, so that I could do better the next time and not be in the same kind of situation. Those skills were really, starting to be something that I didn't even recognize at the time were helping me kind of move forward.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So when you're feeling that, that you need to make a change, you're excited and terrified, and that's how you know you need to move forward. I think it's interesting that you then talked about the skills that you maybe observed in your father and have exercised in your own life, but you started by collaboration, right? Like you're not in this alone. You reached out to your community, and if one didn't exist, did you try to create one? How did that look?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at that time, I was lucky that I had a community. I was living in and still am in the area that I grew up in. And so I had, still a best friend from third grade that I was relying on. I had my parents, but there was, other opportunities, particularly since then in the years that followed that really ended up having me explore how else can I collaborate. So I used that skill of recognizing an opportunity to say, where are the opportunities here that I can find people to support me and that I can support? Because, as an educator, I was a natural helper. I wanted to help, but this was when I needed help. And so really being able to find people and circumstances and situations where I could be helped, but then I could also help someone else. And that was huge because so many people want to help. They just don't always know how. And they need to have that invitation sometimes. Not everyone is just going to help you to help you. They sometimes need to know that you want that help and that you will accept that help.
Yeah, and I think that's such a big thing. A lot of people have a hard time accepting, right? Receiving
Yes.
help. And so I think your word collaboration is really important because it infers that sort of give and take. It goes back both ways. And it's not necessarily give and take, but give and receive. And,
Right.
and that's part of it, right? I
Yeah.
also think it's really interesting that you're obviously careful in the words that you choose to express yourself. And I think that's obviously intentional because you said over and over again about your first relationship, you talked about the learning, the things that you had done wrong. There doesn't seem to be a lot of blame and complaint in what you're talking about. It's really, hey, how am I showing up? How have I changed? What did I do? How do you learn and solve and adjust? And I think that also plays back to collaboration, that if you take ownership, it's easier to be a collaborative partner, right? It work
Absolutely.
together, don't they?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think there's always something, particularly in relationships, that, relationships go sideways many times. And, oftentimes it's sort of at the fault or the hands of one person, but it doesn't mean you can't learn from that. So you can say either what part did I play or how do I not make the same choice again? And so that was, I think, something that was really important for me to learn is how do I value myself? How do I own my own power in order to not be in a situation where the same kinds of things are happening, whether it's, personally or professionally, even in, job changes, people I think experience that and need to figure out, even if it was something, their boss's fault or, something that they felt like they couldn't control, what can you control to make different decisions for yourself next time?
Yeah, and I think understanding what role you play also puts you in the position that you can actually do something, right? One of the things that we
Right.
talk There's no ABC, no assuming, blaming, complaining, and defending. And you're talking about bringing that into a state of learning so that you can apply it to the collaboration. You can apply it to your next action. You can do something with it, right? And that's actionable. And that's something that everybody
Right.
can do. You say that you work with other women. Why are you working with other women? Why is that special to you? Why is that important to you?
I think working with other women is so important to me because it's something that I always needed. And even in the collaboration that I had, even in the amazing supports that I've had in my life, I recognize that everything I've done, every decision I've made, every regret that I have is all based in the lack of confidence that I had at the time. And it was in that lack of understanding my own self-worth, my own power, being able to prioritize myself that led me to making different decisions that maybe weren't in my best interest, relationships that weren't, jobs that weren't. And so for me, that's what's so important is to be able to say, wow, is the thing that was my biggest burden, this lack of self-confidence and ownership in myself, is that what is now going to be the thing that can save other people and from that heartache, that frustration, those things. I think that's really what is so powerful for me about this is that I'm not coming at it saying, I've mastered these skills years ago and here's what I did. And I have it all figured out because I still don't. Even today, I don't. There's things that I'm wrestling with in terms of doubt and confidence that when I work with women, we can share that together and I can bring them through my journey as sort of a way to explain the progress that you can make, even if it's never to where you think is perfect or done.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you're really thinking about it, and I'm not trying to minimize what you're saying, but I'm saying that what made you weak is making you strong for others.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
every weakness is a strength in disguise, and you're just
Yes.
learning how to, express that in this way. And I think that's powerful. Tell me about what how once you've embraced this mindset, and I know that it's something that you continue to experiment with and continue to use, but once you've embraced this mindset of being excited and terrified at the same time about something, something pulling you to something that you find intimidating, what's changed for you?
I think by embracing this mindset of being both excited and terrified and going for it, regardless of kind of the level of excited or terrified, what that's done is open up an entire world to me that wouldn't have been there otherwise. If I had just stayed in fear and doubt, I may still be teaching in the classroom, which I loved to do for many years, but since then became a school principal and opened an entrepreneurial school for kids, and then left that to start my own company and supporting women and, getting a modeling contract, which was crazy, like exciting and terrifying at the same time. All of those things, none of those would have happened if I had just stayed scared or stayed in a space that like maybe I'm not quite worthy enough and waiting for permission for someone to make me worthy. And that to me is what changes everything. I mean, even from things like hobbies that I've tried. I started yoga and hiking. I got scuba dive certified, which 10-year-old me would have never, ever, even in a million years imagined I would do. But I realized I was excited and terrified by that. And so that was going to be worth doing
Yeah,
as in all of these things.
I like that you added in this last round and going for it, because it's not just being excited and terrified and going to meditate on top of a mountain and
Right.
manifest all these great things. You did something. You acted ethically, and I think that the other thing is just not acting. You acted. You learned. You collaborated. You learned and you collaborated and you again realigned and act. It is the doing that achieved all of these things. It is not just a thought process, right?
Absolutely. That's why I'm very intentional in calling them entrepreneurial skills and not entrepreneurial mindsets, because I think often we hear about an entrepreneurial mindset and then it stops there for a lot of people because they don't know how to act on that. They don't know that these are skills you can develop. I think about the skill of staying curious. It's not just a mindset of curiosity. It's if you are practicing staying curious, you are thinking about all of those things that might be barriers to you. You are curious about other people. You are curious about why you're showing up the way you are. You're curious about what could potentially happen if you go for it and you do these things. And so I'm very intentional about calling them skills versus mindsets for that reason.
And I also like the word practicing there. You're practicing
Mhm.
skills in private so you can perform them in public. You practice
Absolutely.
them in your collaborative circles. You learn from the practice of that application, and then you apply it and perform in public. Many of us perform in public and wonder why it didn't work because we're practicing in public.
Right.
We never tried it on. We never did it, right? We just
Right.
thought about it. So that's
Yeah.
I think again, you're very careful about the words you choose, and I want to just recognize you for that because I think it's really, really clear. I also think it's really important that we are for others what we need in the world, and it's very clear that that's why you started working with women, right? You said that. Am I wrong?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, they say that there's a phrase I heard many years ago, like the books that you need, you have to write. You have to write the books that you need. You have to be that person for other people that you need because that's sometimes the biggest growth that you have. When I try to be a role model for my own kids or for anybody in my life, I constantly am going back to what do I need to be for them? And that's also what I need to be for me then.
Yeah. There's a great saying that we say here is become who you are before you have the proof. And that's what it sounds like you do,
Absolutely.
right? So how has this uh, how's your evolution, for a lack of another word? I know there are a lot of other words that we could use, but how's this growth for you shown up for your kids? What did they tell you about it?
Yeah, I think it's shown up in a few different ways for them. I have several kids, from two different marriages, from my first and second. So my oldest daughter is 23, and then I have a 21-year-old and a 12-year-old, and then I'm also raising a 15-year-old, and there's some older kids. So we have this whole big blended family going on.
Blended
And I
family.
say that to say, there's all of the different kids have seen me in different iterations of my life. So my older kids have seen me with their dad and sort of who I was. And they often say, God, you're not even the same person, mom, and I'm like, that's a good thing. I had you, my oldest, when I was 24. So I hope I'm not the same as I was when I was 24. We should all be growing in ourselves. And so I've seen them react to the different examples that I've made. So, being able to leave a steady paycheck and start a new business was something that now they know they can also do. They've seen that. My younger daughters, I always tell them every day I send them off to school. And one of the things I tell them is use your voice because I didn't have a voice for a really long time in my life. I just let other people dictate what it should look like or what I should think or how I should act. And when I found my voice, the whole world opened up to me. And so I tell them often, use your voice, and they will come home and say, they sometimes don't say like, Mom, I used my voice today, but they'll say, hey, Mom, I asked for help on this assignment today and I got what I needed. Or, hey, a friend was not being kind to me and I had a talk with them and I worked it out with them. And to me, that's them sort of taking that and using their voice.
That's amazing. Something we do in Paper Napkin Wisdom now in this season, in honor of an old napkin that we received, which was "What you appreciate appreciates." And in honor of this idea of what you appreciate appreciates, we're asking all our guests to give a shout out, to recognize somebody who has been influential or supportive in their journey and pay forward this appreciation into the universe, right? So, who would you like to shout out and why do you appreciate them?
I would love to shout out so many people because there's been so many people in my path, of course. I think the person that comes to mind right away is Freddie Shagog, who is a dear friend of mine for many years. He's the podcast co-host for me. And he and I developed a friendship that was very unlikely. We are very different people from very different lives and walks of life. And yet we were always been there for each other with no expectation for anything in return. So we shout each other out with each other. So we support each other when things are hard for both of us. We're kind of in it with each other, building each other up and pulling each other up. And we're each other's biggest fans with other people. So he's a natural person that I would want to shout out here to say, you can support someone that has nothing, to offer you in return because you've built a friendship with them and you see something special in them and you want the world to see that also. And that's something that he has taught me and that we continue to teach each other.
That's wonderful. Thanks for joining me.
Absolutely.
That was a stirring conversation with Laura, wasn't it? Maybe you found yourself remembering a moment that you didn't realize was still guiding you. Maybe something she said made you pause and wonder what else is waiting just beyond your comfort zone. As you reflect on this episode, you may already notice how the ideas are beginning to settle in or spark something new. Let's visit what showed up today. When fear and excitement show up together, you might already know what you need to do next. Discomfort could mean you're already growing, whether or not you've recognized it yet. The right people have probably been closer than you realized. What happens when you let them in? Maybe you've been playing small in a place where your brilliance is meant to shine. Alignment is something you chase. It's something you notice when your actions echo your purpose. So, as you step back into your world, ask yourself this: where is the excitement hiding just beneath the fear? And what might become possible if you moved toward it anyway? You don't have to have it all figured out right now. You just need to start listening to what's already whispering inside you. If something shifted for you in this episode, even slightly, share it, subscribe, leave a review, and send it to someone who's standing on their own edge, ready to leap. And if one insight stood out, write it out on a napkin, take a photo, and post it with the hashtag Paper Napkin Wisdom. You never know who might need to see it or what ripple it will create. Because sometimes the smallest message written at the right time changes everything. Until next time, stay open, stay brave, and trust that what's exciting and terrifying might just be worth it. Make it a great day.